This conference will now be recorded.
Hey guys, good morning.
Good morning, Jay.
Yeah, we'll start. So yesterday when we were discussing, we were at availability sets, right? So give me a minute. Let me close this. Right. So we were discussing about availability sets, right? Now in availability sets, what we discussed is we discussed about update domain and we discussed about fault domains, right? Update and fault domain. The fault domain, as we discussed, it will help you to handle any hardware-related failures or unknown maintenance issues kind of stuff. Whereas update domain is basically help you in avoiding unavailability of your application services if Microsoft is doing some updates to their backend for our backend infrastructure, which is nothing but a Hyper-V or hardware updates or whatever, right? So to come out of those situations, what we had seen is we have to have both fault domains and update domains with number of VMs as a part of that. The number of VMs again will be kind of depends on your application requirement or capacity planning that whatever you have in place, right? So what we do is we'll go and quickly look at how do we create availability set and try to put few VMs within the availability set and see um, how they actually fit into different domains, right? So that is something just we'll have a quick practical this thing on that, and then we'll move on further with other topics. Okay. So let's go ahead with availability set creation. Okay. So how do I go and check it? Just go and put availability set within the search option in your portal, and then right add. Now you as usual there will be a name for this availability set. Then I'll call it as demo availability set and a resource group, right? We'll call it as availability set resource group. Okay, let us put this in a separate resource group. Now which location you want to put this, I'll leave that as it is. I'm fine with that, in South India. And here is where you will decide how many fault domains you can go with, right? So I'll leave this as a default 2, but you can go with maximum of 3, right? So I'll leave that as default 2. And the update domains, as we discussed yesterday, we can go up to 20. So the maximum number of update domains that what we can go is, right, up to 20. So let me go ahead and create a availability set with 2 fault domains and 5 update domains, right? So we created an availability set, right, with 2 fault domains and 5 update domains. Let me refresh to see if it is created. Right, so that is successful. Now we just have the availability set in place. Now we haven't used it. So let me go and create a couple of VMs and put them in, I'll create 3 virtual machines and put them in this particular availability set, and then we'll see how they will, put, where they will be placed, whether they will be placed in the same availability set or different availability sets, and what and how do they look like, that we'll be able to view within the virtual machine properties, right? So let us go and quickly create a couple of virtual machines, right? Resource group I'll select as availability set resource group, then I'll put as VM1, and I'll select South India, right? And here is where you go and select the availability set, right? Now if you're planning for a high availability options, that's what you see, right? The availability options, if you're planning, then what you need to do is you need to go and select whatever the availability options that which you're going for, and then you will select. So the two availability options that what you have is, one is availability zone and the second one is availability set. We haven't discussed about availability zones yet. It will be discussing that in our future classes, but for now, because we have the availability set, we'll go and select the availability set. Okay, so then it will give you the list of availability sets that whatever you have, so that your VM will go and fall into that particular availability set. Okay, now the operating system as usual and other settings will follow, right? Just go and fill this up. Right, I'll give leave the other stuff, the default ones. We'll create and review it. Let that get deployed. We'll go and look at, we'll go and create another virtual machine within the same availability set. Okay, so I'll go and create VM2, right? The same resource group, VM-2, and I'll select right South India, then availability set. Right, what is the availability set name and the operating system. Right, let's create the other one. So we created two virtual machines, and we'll go and create the third one as well. That will help us in better understanding about the availability sets. Okay, so let me go and create a third one as well. Availability set resource group, and then VM3. Right, and then let me select South India availability set and availability set name that which it has to go into, and the operating system. Right. Right, so what we did is we created three virtual machines, and let us assume that they are hosted with similar applications. Let us say that they are They're part of your web server spool. Let us think so. Okay. Now, so as per our requirement, so what we did is we created an availability set with 2 fault domains and 5 update domains, right? And these virtual machines are placed in those, what do you call it as, availability sets, right? Let me go and quickly see within the availability set, right? So it is still updating, it seems, still creating, but we'll be able to see what are those fault domains and update domains in which this particular VM is in, right? Just let us wait for a minute or so. Once the VM is created, then you will be able to see all these VMs part of different fault domains and different update domains. Because you have 2 fault domains, then 1 and 2 will be in fault domain 0 and fault domain 1, whereas VM3 will again go to the fault domain 0 because you have only 2 fault domains, right? So if you have 3 fault domains, these 3 will be in 3 different fault domains, which means that fault domain 0, fault domain 1, and fault domain 2, right? So that's how it will be. And because you have 5 update domains, and VM1 will be an update domain 0, update domain 1 is VM2, and update domain 3 is VM3. So likewise, they will be placed accordingly, right? So let us quickly see, wait for some time to get this created. Once we have that, then we'll be able to see which VM is in which domain. Okay, you can see how many fault domains, how many update domains, how many virtual machines. Okay, here you can view it from here, right? We can also see from virtual machine properties, but from here also you can view. Now the first virtual machine you created, VM1, is in fault domain 0, right? And VM1 is in update domain 0. And VM2 is in fault domain 1 and update domain 1. So what it means is, the fault domain, we have 2 fault domains, right? So one fault domains are 2 we selected, so it is nothing but 0 and 1, right? So that's why you see 0, 1, and again it went to 0. What it means, VM3 and VM1 will be on one physical hardware, whereas VM2 is on a separate physical hardware or separate rack, whatever, or server, whatever you call it as. Now, if one of the rack goes down, let us say that one goes down, then you still have your VMs running because they are on a different hardware altogether, right? Because they are in a different fault domain, right? And if you go to the update domain, because we selected the number of update domains as 5, now you see your virtual machines spanned across 3 different update domains. What it means, when Microsoft updates, it updates update domain 0, that means that VM1 will be down, let us say, but you still have VM2 and VM3 up and running, right? So likewise, you can go and put your virtual machines into different fault domains and update domains based on your requirement to avoid outages, right? So that's about the fault domain and update domains. So if you have any questions, we will take. Otherwise, I think we are done with this particular topic. Any questions on this topic? So okay, one second. Can we assign instead of assigning to default? What is that? Instead of assigning it to the default, can we assign the fault domains? Can we assign the fault domains instead of assigning it to the default? No, I didn't get your question. Maybe I think you mean that increasing of the number of fault domains? AJ, like VM1 to fault domain 1, okay. VM1 to fault domain 1. No, so it is taken care by your Azure itself. Azure will take care of putting them in a sequential order. So I don't have, or you don't have an option to put that. Okay, VM1 should go into fault domain 0 and so on. So it follows a sequential order, and then it puts it places a VM into a particular fault or update domain based on in which fault domain or update domain the last VM is placed, and how many fault and update domains you have, right? So there is no option for us to go and explicitly select this VM should go and fall in this domain, and this VM should go and fall in this domain, and so on.
So basically, it is automatic.
That's right.
Automatically it does on
Yeah,
back
so
end.
there is a backend logic which makes sure that they are falling in different fault and update domains. Okay, right. So any other questions?
See, one virtual machine can fall under any number of, how many number of all domains?
One virtual machine will be in one fault domain itself, because it
But
cannot
here we
fall.
can see there are. But
Okay,
here
so
we
what
can
is
see
fault
that
domain? Okay, let us come back to that. What is fault domain? Fault domain is nothing but a physical server, right? Now one VM cannot be on two physical servers. Simple logic, right? So one VM will be on only one physical server. Fault domain is all about your hardware, right? So if you are putting your VM into multiple fault domains, if you are putting your VMs into multiple fault domains, which means that those VMs are sitting on different hardwares. In our case, we have two servers we can think of, which is 0 and 1. Because we selected 2 while we are creating the availability set, that's why your VMs are placed in server 0 and server 1. That's what I'm calling it as server 0 and server 1 for understanding, but we have to call it as fault domain 0 and fault domain 1, right? So one VM cannot fall into two fault domains because it is physical server, correct? Same with the update domain, right? It is not possible. Hope I answered your question.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions, guys? Okay, so if no questions, we will move on. Still have half an hour. So what we'll do is we'll quickly go and see PowerShell stuff. So this PowerShell we will be using to what do you call it, as to deploy virtual machines and other stuff. We can, as I said, there are multiple tools that which you can use, right? One of the tool is PowerShell. You also have Azure CLI, and you can use ARM templates and so on. So what we start with is we'll start with PowerShell, and today what we are going to see, what are those things that which are needed within the PowerShell for us to go and use the Azure PowerShell commandlets to go and write a few lines to automatically or to provision these VMs using your command line tools or PowerShell tools, right? So for that, what I did is, if you have your own, if your machine is capable enough, my machine is little older, so I have older version of PowerShell. So what I did is I did spin a Windows 10 machine on Azure itself, which we will be using to quickly check at what are those things that which are needed for us to go and set up PowerShell. Okay, so first thing first, what you need to make sure what you need to check is just make sure that you have the latest version of PowerShell installed on your machine. Okay, so that is the first thing that which we should be checking. So the version 5 should be enough. So just go and update your PowerShell to the latest version if you don't have that on your machine. So let me quickly show you how do we go and check this PowerShell run as administrator. Okay. So as we all know, I think most of you know that this is a kind of a CMD prompt, command line prompt, which Microsoft slowly introduced, and this has got very good features, and and the commands that what we use here in this particular PowerShell, we call it as commandlets, right? So that's how they are named as. And you can just go, do some search so that you will be kind of read or about the basic and other stuff, which I will not be covering here, but understanding or knowing the knowledge of PowerShell will be helpful, at least for provisioning the stuff, whatever we need, right? So to start with, yeah, please.
So do you have any documentation or anything for these to go through for the concepts?
PowerShell I can share. I'll share that those documents, PowerShell documents. I should have a few of them, so that I will be able to share. But you have enough on Microsoft portal itself. I'll also share those links that will help us to kind of get what are the things. For what we need is, we may not need in-depth knowledge, but at least to understand what is that particular line within the code is doing, and so on, right? So that at that level, if you are, then I think most of the stuff is there in Git, and even within the Microsoft documentation itself when it comes to Azure, right? So if you have knowledge beyond that, then it's always good, but at least we should be in a position to just copy pasting and understand and tweak those things as per our requirement, right? So that is what is expected. I'll share those documents. Yeah.
Okay. For the certifications, like, do you recommend any other document? I mean, like the concept wise, this lab session is enough, or like, do you recommend any documentation to read out for the certification?
I would recommend to read Microsoft docs itself. That is one place, and I have a few two or three books. Two books I think I have. I'll be sharing that along with the PowerShell one, so that you will get that, and maybe you can go through those documents as well. Yeah.
Okay,
But
sure.
best place is I mean, anybody whoever writes a book or article, their reference will be your product documentation itself, right? So yeah, it will be huge, but it's worth of reading, right? So I'll share those books, that whatever I have, the PDF files, and as you asked, the PowerShell one, then
Sure.
maybe you can go through that. Yeah, just making a note of that. Okay. So what is the version of PowerShell I have, right? So let me go and quickly run a command which will give me the, right? So this is a command which will give you the version of the PowerShell, right? So if you just want only the version, then you can put, right, PS version table, right? So you have, so in this Windows 10 I have version 5. I think that should be enough for me to cover most of the stuff. If you have version 3 or so, then there are few commandlets that which are not available in version 3. So just upgrade that to the latest version, or at least version 5. Okay, so that is one thing that which I would recommend. Now this is the first one, and the second one is there's something called as execution policy, right? Now what is this execution policy is it basically allows or it basically restricts execution of certain commands within the operating system, right? So you can set this particular execution policy to some value, so that what do you call it as, it will allow the commands that whatever you are executing without any errors, right? So by default it should be, it will be in restricted. So what you can do is you can go and change that to remotely signed, right? Remote signed, right? So you can see the default execution policy is restricted. We have to change this to get our commands running. So I'll go and change this to remotely signed, right? So how do I do that? Get hyphen execution is a get command. Then there's something called a set, right? Set execution policy, and I am setting this to remote signed, right? So remote signed. So what it does, it basically allows us to execute or run the commands through PowerShell. Otherwise, we'll get an error during the execution of the command itself, right? Now let me go and recheck what is the whether it is changed or not. Please change it to remote signed. Okay, so this is the second step that which you will be doing, right? Now Azure is a separate entity, right? So it is not part of your operating system, right? So Microsoft allows each product vendor to develop their own Azure modules, PowerShell modules, right? So if you are a Exchange administrator, then you have Exchange related PowerShell modules, or you are a SharePoint administrator, you will have modules of PowerShell are around that. And if you are an Azure administrator, you will also have a PowerShell modules for that particular Azure product, right? So as different vendors also, if you're talking about VMware, VMware also has got their own PowerShell modules. Now by default on your operating system, those modules will not be available, right? So what do we need to do to get those things is we need to go and install those modules, and then once you install those modules, they are available or they are installed on your machine, which means that you will be able to run the PowerShell commands of that particular product, because you have the product related what you call PowerShell modules installed, right? So because we are going to use our Azure PowerShell module, that's the reason we need to install Azure PowerShell modules on this particular machine, right? So that is the another step. Okay, so let us go and install Azure PowerShell module. Okay, now there is a command called install module, right? This is a command that which we will be using to install any PowerShell module for that matter, right? And -name, right? So if you press tab, it will auto resolve to that particular whatever you call parameter or whatever, right? Then what is that module I am installing? I am installing Azure module which is called as AZ. Okay, and there is a switch after this. If you have older version of modules, then this particular switch will replace it, which means that if you have earlier versions of we have earlier versions like AZ ARM modules, we call it as, if you have some Azure ARM modules, if you have the older modules, then it will also replace those modules as well, right? So what you are doing here is basically you are installing the PowerShell modules of your Azure, and the command is very simple and straightforward and easy to remember. Install module and the name of the module itself, and -allo clobber, right? So let me go and press enter, right? So what it does is it will install those modules. It will ask whether you want to install or you don't want, then we'll say yes. So there's a warning. And all these things you have to run your PowerShell command prompt in administrator mode, right? So otherwise you will not be able to execute this command. So I'll select A to say yes to all, right? So this should install required modules of your Azure. It will take a minute or so because it has to uh, look over the internet and then download. You can see the installation. You can see it installs different packages, right? It will take a couple of minutes. Let us wait that to complete. Okay, so while this gets while that gets completed, we'll go and look at another PowerShell related tool. Now what we had seen is we had seen a command prompt, right? And you also have something called as PowerShell ISE, right? So let us launch this PowerShell ISE and see what it is. If few of you might already know it, if you are administrator, Windows administrator or VMware or some kind of administration into. So this is basically a tool that which will allow you to kind of write multiple lines of code and execute. Like it's more or less like Notepad++ or what do you call it as Visual Studio Code kind of different tools are there, right? So similarly, you have Microsoft provides you with a tool called PowerShell ISE. So we can also use this particular tool to write multiple lines of code, and then you can execute that from here as well, right? So we'll use this most of the times while we are writing our codes, or when we do want to read what is there in that code and so on. Okay, so it seems it is done. Right, so you are done with the installation of these modules, right? So what did we do? First is make sure that you have latest version of PowerShell. Check the execution policy. If it is restricted, change it to remote signed, and then install required Azure PowerShell modules. So the command is install module-name AZ allo clobber, right? Now you have your Azure modules installed. Now you can directly connect to the Azure portal and run the commands that whatever you need, or you can provision a resource. All those things can be done. But before I connect to the Azure or try to connect to the Azure, I have to log into this portal, right? Otherwise, I will not have access to the resources. I have to get myself authenticated using my ID, right? That is the first step that which you will be doing before you do any activity on the Azure, on your Azure subscription, right? So there is a command to go and connect to the Azure portal, right? So what is that? AZ connect or connect hyphen AZ account, right? Connect hyphen AZ account is the command. Now when you execute this command, what it does is it launches the authentication page. Okay, so here you will be using the same user ID and password that which you have to get into your what do you call Azure portal, right? Now let me use my user ID and password which I subscribed, right? And then password. So it tries to authenticate. once it is authenticated, it will give you the details like what is the account and what is the subscription and what is your tenant ID. Tenant ID is your organization ID, which is unique for each and every customer, and what is the environment you got into, right? So these are the details that which you have. Okay, now, so what did we do? We connected to the Azure portal or Azure environment, and you got into that, right? The next step that what we do is we'll go and run from basic commands. Okay, so what are those basic commands? Let us say that I want to know the list of resource groups, right? How do I do that? Get hyphen AZ. You can press tab to get the commands as well, right? Resource. You can also get the resource. That means the list of resources within your Azure, or you can also get resource groups, right? It will give me the list of resource groups, right? So I have around 4 resource groups. For better reading, you can also format it as table, right? Now you have 4 different, what do you call it, as resource groups, right? Now how do I get the list of virtual machines? Get hyphen AZVM. That's the command to get the list of virtual machines, right? So I have these virtual machines that which are running, and you can also see their location, right? The OS type and network interface card, and then the other details as well, right? Provision state and so on, right? So this is about your what do you call it as uh, get virtual machine details. Okay, now you can also create resources using the same what you call PowerShell commandlet. Guys, give me a minute, okay? Just give me a minute, 1 second. I have some emergency. Sorry for that, guys. I had some emergency call. Fine. So this is how you can get the details of your virtual machines or your resources or any other resource for that matter. You can also get the list of network interface cards. You can also get um, you know different items that what are resources that whatever you have. So there is a documentation that which I will share that can be used to get different commands as well. Now within ISC, that the one that which I had just shown you, this is another place you can find the list of Azure commands or any commands for that matter. So you can see the list of categorized modules. From this categorization you can go and search the commands that whatever you want. For example, you are running a command called get AZVM, right? Now if what is this AZVM, what are the different what is the syntax for this, right? You can go and look at that by clicking get details, right? Or you can also have a help here which will give you in detail information about that particular command, right? You can see get hyphen VM and what are the different what you call parameters within that, and you will also have few examples here, right? So you see get VM hyphen resource group name. You can also explicitly give resource group name and then virtual machine name. Then it will give you the details of the entire virtual machine itself, right? So as you have multiple parameters within this command along with example, right? So this will be very useful when you are trying to kind of use this PowerShell commandlets, whether to get information or to provision something, right? So that is very much needed, and this is where you go and find. Of course, you can find the same details on your Azure portal. If you go to the PowerShell module, you will get all these details there as well. But you can use this. You can use or follow the examples that whatever are given here to provision the resources or to get information whatever you need, right? So same as with the other things. Let us say that delete, right? You want to delete something, then you go and type delete option, then you may get those commands that whatever are there with delete or remove, right? You want to remove a resource group, right? You want to remove a resource group, and go and look for the command of that, right? So what is that command? Remove resource group, right? And name of the resource group. Or you can also put hyphen force to force the deletion of that resource group, right? So these are we can go and use different command lines within you can use this as a reference, or you can also use the Azure portal, right, to get Azure what you call documentation to get these different command lines. Okay, now so what we do is we'll try to quickly check how do we create a virtual machine within Azure, right? So we can quickly go and check how do we create a virtual machine within Azure. So before we create any resource, the first thing that what we need to do is we need to create a resource group, right? So what is the command for resource group creation is the use of or the advantage of using this ISE is, you can see it, right? It will give me the list of commands, right? I can go and select the command itself, right? So it will also give me the syntax if I press the cursor on that, right? New Azure resource group, have a name. What is the name of the resource group, right? I'll say that PSRG. It will also give me the list of existing resource group because it has got that information because you already authenticated to your portal, right? Azure portal. Let us say that as PS resource group hyphen location. Now, what is the location you want to put this particular resource group into? Now it will give me the list of locations that which are available, right? Let me go and put it in South India. And then you can also look for the other options. What are the other options you have, right? For me, this is enough to create a resource group, right? Resource group name and location. I'll go and create it. So if I can select this and execute this command, it automatically creates the resource group, right? Let me go and do it. So you can see this resource group is created, and you can see this command prompt here. Now let me go and run get hyphen resource group. Right, you can see PSRG is created. Okay, so likewise we can use this command lines, PowerShell command lines to create different resources within Azure, right? Now, so we'll go further on this. We'll try to continue with this. I have some very emergency now, so I have to stop today. Please excuse me, and we'll continue tomorrow at 7 o'clock. Sorry for that. I am having some emergency where I have to rush. Sorry for that, guys. If you have any questions, we'll take it tomorrow. But we are done for today. Yeah. Okay, guys.
Okay, no problem.
Yeah,
Thank
right. Thanks.
you.